My name is Natalie Hart. I was 34 years old when a stranger sat across from me in a small cafe in River North, Chicago, and told me not to file for divorce. It was early afternoon. The place smelled like burnt coffee and rain-soaked coats. Office workers talked softly around us. Nothing about the moment looked dramatic, but my chest felt tight as if the air had suddenly changed. The man introduced himself as Daniel Reed. Calm voice, careful posture, not nervous, not angry, just controlled. He said my husband's name as if it were a fact, not an accusation. "Your husband is seeing my wife." I did not gasp. I did not cry. I felt something colder settle in my stomach. Confirmation has a weight that suspicion does not. Daniel placed a thick envelope on the table between us. He did not open it yet. He looked at me and said one sentence that still echoes in my head. "If you move first, you lose." I stared at the envelope. My hands were steady, even though my heart was racing. I had imagined this moment 100 times. I thought I would scream or confront or collapse. Instead, I sat still. Daniel explained quietly. "Courts do not hear pain, they hear proof. If you act on emotion, you protect the people who lied to you. If you wait, you protect yourself." He told me he had learned this the hard way. He had already spoken to lawyers. He had already started documenting everything: dates, times, locations, patterns. I listened without interrupting. Somewhere between his words and the hum of the cafe, I realized something important. This was not a meeting about revenge. This was a warning. I thought about my husband, Eric, about the late nights. The phone turned face down, the way our home had grown quiet, without a single fight. Daniel finally slid the envelope closer, but still did not open it. "You do not have to decide today," he said. "Just promise me one thing. Do not rush." I nodded once. I did not know it yet, but that moment in that ordinary cafe was the moment my life stopped spinning and started moving forward with intention. Before everything broke, I believed my life was simple and stable. I had been married to Eric Whitaker for 7 years. He worked in operations for a logistics company, long hours but predictable. I worked remotely as a localization specialist. Most days I translated documents at our kitchen table with the radio playing softly in the background. We were not dramatic people. We did not post grand declarations online or surprise each other with trips. Our marriage was built on routines. Saturday mornings at the grocery store, takeout on Fridays, a movie on the couch where Eric always fell asleep before the ending. Eric was not romantic, but he was reliable. If something broke, he fixed it. If I needed help, he showed up. He rarely raised his voice. He never forgot to pay bills. That kind of steadiness felt like safety to me. I told myself this was what grown-up love looked like. Looking back, I realized how easily I confused quiet with loyalty. Eric did not talk much about his feelings, but I assumed that meant depth. He did not share much about work, but I assumed that meant responsibility. There were no obvious warning signs then, no shouting, no distance I could name, just a peaceful house and a predictable life. My parents liked him. My friends said I was lucky to have a calm marriage. I agreed. I believed that the absence of conflict meant the presence of trust. I did not know yet that a home can be silent, not because it is safe, but because someone has already started leaving emotionally. At the time, I thought I had chosen well. I thought consistency was the same thing as commitment. I was wrong about that. The changes did not arrive all at once. They came quietly layered into our days until the pattern became impossible to ignore. Eric started coming home later. At first it was 9 o'clock, then 10, then closer to midnight. He said a new contract was putting pressure on the team. I believed him because his job had always been demanding. Then his phone changed. It used to sit face up on the counter. Now it stayed face down or in his pocket. When it buzzed, he checked it quickly and turned the screen away. I told myself I was imagining things. A new scent appeared in our bathroom. Not soap, not deodorant. Cologne. Eric had never worn cologne in 7 years. When I asked, he shrugged and said someone at work gave him a sample. His clothes changed too. New shirts, better fitted. He started getting haircuts at a salon instead of the old barber shop near our house. None of these things were wrong on their own. People are allowed to change. What unsettled me was the timing. On weekends, he started going to the gym. He would leave mid-morning and come back after lunch freshly showered and oddly energized. Not tired, not sore, just light, happy in a way I had not seen at home in months. I tried to be supportive. I packed dinners. I sent messages asking if he needed anything. Inside were photographs. Eric and Brooke at restaurants walking together, entering a movie theater, standing close in a parking garage. Each photo was labeled with a date and location. I recognized her immediately. The wine-colored coat, the same woman from the cafe. Daniel explained that he had hired a professional after his suspicions became impossible to ignore. He documented everything methodically. No emotion, just records. He did not gloat. He did not insult my husband. He spoke the way someone does when they have already cried alone and moved past shock. I felt two emotions at once, relief and grief. Relief because I was not imagining things. Grief because it was real. Daniel slid a flash drive across the table. "You will need this if you decide to protect yourself," he said. I asked him why he was helping me. "Because we are in the same position," he answered, "and no one should go through this blind." Before we left, he gave me his number. He told me to call if I needed clarification on any of the files. As we stood to leave, he paused. "I will reach out again," he said. "There is something important we need to discuss." 3 days later, he called. This time, his voice was more deliberate. He said he had a plan. We met again at the same cafe in River North. Daniel was already there when I arrived. He did not stand to greet me. He waited until I sat down. Only then did he reach under the table and lift a hard black case onto the empty chair beside him. The sound it made when it touched the floor was dull and heavy. He did not open it right away. "Before I show you this," Daniel said, "I need you to understand something. This is not about revenge. This is about timing." Then he opened the case. Inside were stacks of cash neatly bound. I did not need to count it to know it was a large amount. My breath caught despite myself. Daniel looked directly at me. "I am asking you not to file for divorce yet." My first reaction was anger. It felt wrong. It felt like being bought. I told him immediately that I was not for sale. He nodded as if he expected that response. "I know," he said. "That is why this is not a bribe. It is compensation for endurance," he explained slowly. "If I filed now, Eric would panic. Panic would reach Brooke. They would cut contact, destroy evidence, rewrite their story. What looked clear now would become blurry in court. Waiting would do the opposite. Patterns would deepen, evidence would multiply, excuses would disappear." Daniel told me he planned to wait 3 more months. During that time, he would continue documenting everything legally and carefully. He asked me to do one thing only: do not move first. No emotional messages, no confrontations, no sudden changes, only normal behavior and shared information that already existed. Facts only. I asked him why he needed me specifically. "Because if you move first, your husband will warn my wife," he said, "and everything I have built will collapse." The weight of it settled on me. Our situations were connected. One wrong move from either of us would protect the people who betrayed us. I stared at the case again. 3 months felt unbearable. Living in the same house, acting normal, carrying this knowledge alone. Daniel closed the case and slid it toward me. "This money does not buy your silence," he said. "It buys you space. Time to think clearly instead of reacting from pain." I did not touch it for a long moment. Then I nodded. I agreed to wait. Not because of the money, but because I wanted to end this the right way, with proof instead of rage, with dignity instead of chaos. I carried the case home that day, feeling its weight in my hands, not the weight of cash, the weight of a decision that would change everything. The next weeks required a kind of discipline I did not know I had. Nothing about my routine changed. I still made breakfast. I still asked neutral questions. I still wished Eric a good day. From the outside, our marriage looked intact. Inside, I was documenting. Daniel and I agreed on strict rules. No emotional messages, no opinions, only facts, dates, times, locations. If it could not be proven, it was not shared. When Eric said he had late meetings, Daniel would confirm Brooke left her office at the same time. When Eric said he was traveling for work, Daniel would quietly check flights. Patterns began to overlap too perfectly to be coincidence. I found the condo lease by accident while looking for a utility bill. Evanston, 2 bedrooms. Eric was the sole signer. The lease dated back weeks earlier than his excuse about work stress. I took photos of every page and put the documents back exactly where they were. Daniel told me I had done the right thing. Evidence only matters when it is clean. No scenes, no accusations, no digital footprints that could be questioned. We treated it like an audit. Every meeting was logged, every overnight stay was recorded, every shared location strengthened the file. Eric grew more relaxed at home, his guard lowered. He believed he had successfully divided his life into separate compartments. That was the mistake people make when they lie long enough. They start believing they are in control. One evening, he mentioned a short business trip to Florida, Tampa, 3 days. I smiled and told him to have a safe flight. Daniel confirmed Brooke booked the same dates. That was when I understood something important. Silence is not weakness when it is chosen. Sometimes silence is preparation, and preparation is power. By the time Eric returned from that trip, I was no longer waiting for proof. I was organizing it. What came next would end everything. Not loudly, not emotionally, but completely. Eric came back from Florida relaxed and careless. He brought a small gift from the airport and said the meetings had been exhausting. I thanked him and placed the box on the counter. My face did not change. Inside, I already knew where he had stayed and who had slept beside him. Daniel had secured everything: hotel entry times, shared meals, photos of them walking together like a couple with nothing to hide. It was no longer just an affair. It was a pattern of shared life. A week later, Eric told me something new. He said the commute was wearing him down, that it might make sense to rent a small place closer to work during the week. He said it carefully, watching my reaction. I nodded and told him to do what he thought was best. That decision opened the final door. Daniel confirmed Brooke moved into the same condo. Parking logs showed both cars overnight. Grocery purchases appeared on shared days. Utility accounts were activated. They were no longer sneaking. They were living together. That mattered. Cohabitation removes excuses. It removes confusion. It turns a story into a fact. We chose a Monday morning, 10 a.m., both attorneys ready. Both cases filed within minutes of each other. No warning, no confrontation. By Wednesday, the papers were served. Eric called me in a panic, asking where I was. He rushed home holding stamped documents with shaking hands. His voice was loud, but his eyes were empty. I told him calmly that I knew everything, that I had photos, dates, records, proof of the condo, proof of the trip, proof of the life he built while pretending ours was intact. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. When I told him Brooke's husband had filed the same day, his face collapsed. That night, the house was silent. Not the quiet of avoidance, the quiet of exposure. For the first time in months, the truth had nowhere left to hide, and I finally slept. The weeks that followed were quiet and procedural. Eric tried to negotiate. His attorney reached out with numbers that sounded reasonable on the surface, but ignored responsibility. Daniel told me Brookie did the same. They both wanted the story to end quickly and quietly. We declined. When people are caught, they often want forgiveness without accountability. The court does not work that way. The hearings were not dramatic. There were no speeches, no shouting, just documents reviewed one by one. Photos, timelines, financial records, lease agreements, entry logs. Evidence does not raise its voice. It simply exists. When excuses were offered, they collapsed under timestamps. When blame shifted, it contradicted signed documents. The judge did not comment on emotions. He commented on facts. The ruling came weeks later. The marriage was dissolved with responsibility clearly assigned. The asset division reflected that responsibility. Damages were awarded not as punishment, but as acknowledgement of harm. Eric moved out shortly after. He packed quietly. He apologized once. I accepted the apology without reopening the past. Closure does not require reconciliation. Daniel received a similar outcome. We spoke briefly after everything was finalized. There was no celebration, only relief. What surprised me most was how light my home felt once the truth had passed through it. I repainted the walls, opened the windows, reclaimed the kitchen table where I used to work and worry at the same time. I began sleeping through the night again. Looking back, there are things I wish someone had told me earlier. Trust patterns more than words. Do not confront when you are confused. Confront when you are prepared. Protect your finances, your documents, and your support system quietly and early. Silence is not weakness when it is intentional. Waiting does not mean accepting. It means choosing the moment that protects you. This story is not about revenge. It is about self-respect supported by evidence. I did not win because I waited. I won because I waited with purpose.